This is Ho Onko, and I thank our chair for a wonderful introduction. You did far better than I would do, so I thank you very much. This is from the standpoint of Jodo Shinshu Buddhists. Oops, I'm sorry, I hit something. Let me go back. I'm hitting this. I'm not. Wait a minute. Okay, let me return to where I'm supposed to be. I think I was brushing that with my finger. Okay. Okay, anyway, Ho'onko is probably the most important of our services throughout the year because it is a time when we gather to remember our founder, Shinran Shonin, and to think about his life, to recall his teachings, and to learn from them once again, and to understand how Shinran Shonin's life and teachings, they're just not things that occurred, over 750 years ago, but they're still very important and relevant in our lives today. Anyway, so that's why Ho'onko is so very, very important to us. So I'm very grateful to be here. The title of my talk is What's in a Name? And so I just want to talk about names today. My name is David. You guys have names? What's your name? Yeah. Okay, what's your name? Okay, what's your name? Emma, what's your name? Okay, what's your name? And you have a name? Okay, and you? Okay, what's your name? Good. How about you? And how about you? Okay, we could keep going. I'm guessing that you all have names. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your names with me. I appreciate that. You have wonderful names, beautiful names. Does everyone have a name here? Does anyone not have a name? No, some of you don't have names. So what's going on here, folks? Your parents let you down. Well, I want to talk about names today because it's something we all share. We were meeting each other for the first time, but we can say, hi, my name is David. What's your name? It's a way we can get to know each other and learn a little bit about each other. Names are important. So I want to talk about names today, okay? So these are words from Shinran Shonin. Maybe I'll ask you to join me in Gassho once again. These are the words of Shinran Shonin that he wrote about his name. He says, hence, I am now neither a monk nor layperson. For this reason, I have taken the term Toku as my name. Thank you. Namandab, namandab. So Shinran Shonin wrote these words, the very end, the postscript of his lifetime work, true teaching, practice, and realization of the Pure Land Way. And he wrote these words, in a way that is very personal, in a way that's kind of critical, in a way that's kind of giving us a sense of how important his name was to him. We're going to talk about the name Toku in just a little while, but it really is tied to the realization in his life after he was sent off into exile as a disciple of Honen, sent up into Echigo. He was defrocked. His priestly name was taken away from him by the government. He was given a secular name. But he said, that's not my name. The name you gave me is not my name. My name is Toku. So that's what I want to talk about today, okay? So, here we're gathering for Ho'onko, and as your chair already informed you, Ho'on means to respond in gratitude to the benevolence received from Amida Buddha and our masters and teachers. Okay, so we're gathering to express appreciation to Amida Buddha, but also Shinran Shonin and all of our teachers, all of our masters. And I would include in our teachers and masters not just the people whose pictures and names you see, but other people, Nembutsu followers throughout the ages, our distant relatives or our not so distant relatives, people whose names and faces we know, people whose names and faces we don't know. These are also people I think we can include within the great benevolence of the Buddha that we are now gathering to express our gratitude for. So Ho'onko is our annual service in grateful memory of Shinran Shonin, the founder of our school of Jodo Shinshu. We express, here's a portrait of Shinran Shonin. You can see the dates. So we express gratitude for his life and for his teachings. Okay. Jodo Shinshu is our school of Buddhism, isn't just the name of our school, it's also a very important insight that Shinran Shonin shared with us. It is the true essence of the Pure Land Way. It's for him and for all of us the way in which we can live our true lives. We can become our true selves. We can take our true names and live as we can in the most authentic way with appreciation and awareness. So that's Jodo Shinshu, most important teaching for us, and I think a very important teaching in the world today. And so what does Jodo Shinshu mean? I just sort of paraphrase it or summarize it. We entrust in the Buddha's vow and hear the name of Amida Buddha, Namo Amida Butsu, and that name embodies all of the virtues of the Buddha, perfect wisdom and compassion. That vow and name enables us to be named, enables us to know our humanness, our value, our uniqueness, our role and significance of our lives. That's our name. And the vow and the name allow us to be named. And then through being named, we can awaken to the reality of the primal vow. I know the primal vow is a word that's kind of hard to understand. We talk about it all the time, and maybe you think, what is the primal vow? And we don't get a chance to really find out what it means. It can be complicated. So I've kind of simplified it in my own words. I borrowed from the words of the Zenmon-sama when he wrote his book. It's the fundamental wish of life, in which I phrase in this way: it's to become itself and to give itself to all others so they may live. That's what life is about, to become itself, all living beings. That's our wish in life, to become ourselves, our true selves, and then to give our lives, to give all that we have, to give our lessons and our all that we've been able to receive, and to share it with others so they might live. I think that's the basic wish of life in which we can all share. Shinran Shonin, I asked you your names. He had many names. I was going to ask you what his name was, but then I already gave it to you. He had lots of names. So his birth name, chosen for him by his parents, was Matsu Wakamaru. Okay? He had another name. Those of you who know his life story, at the age of 9, he became a priest, a Tendai priest, and he was given a priestly name by his master Jien. That name was Hannen. And so he had the name Hannen for the next 20 years until he left Mount Hiei, became a disciple of Honen Shonin, and Honen Shonin gave him a name, Shaku, also a priestly name. But somewhere while Shinran was studying with Honen, he asked Honen, he was a very good student, and Honen Shonin saw something in him, so he said, I'm going to give you another name. And he gave him the name Zenshin. So those are all names that had been chosen for Shinran by others. And then the exile came about, the suppression of the Nembutsu movement by the government in 1207, and his priestly status was removed. He said, I'm no longer a priest, but he was given a lay name, a secular name, Fuji Yoshizane. But he said, this is not my name. This is imposed upon me by the government, and so I am not this person. I'm not a lay person in that way either. So he chose the name Shinran, we all know him by. But perhaps more important than just Shinran was this name. This is the name that he took for himself. This is the name that expressed his true self. It was Gutoku Shaku Shinran. You can see the kanji for it. He chose this for himself. This was his true name, and it means foolish, stubble-haired Shinran, disciple of Shakyamuni. Isn't that interesting? What a name. Would anyone like the name foolish, stubble-haired? I kind of like it, but, you know, it's already taken. I can't take that name again. I'll have to come up with a better one for myself. But that's his true name, as he reflected upon his life, and he's reflected upon the benevolence of Amida Buddha and his master Honen. He thought about what his life, how his life had arisen, and all that he had received. He thought about the challenges that he faced, and the problems that he faced, and the possibilities that his life bore for him, and the person that he could be. And as he reflected upon all of this, illuminated by the light of the Amida Buddha, he chose this name. Or maybe a better way of saying it, he was named foolish, stubble-haired Shinran, disciple of Shakyamuni. This is who he was. and he declared it for the rest of his life. So let's talk about a name. What's in a name? This is a famous quotation that many of you know. That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. You all know this one? This was written by William Shakespeare in the famous play Romeo and Juliet. This is the scene where Romeo and Juliet are going to talk it, and Juliet said, "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" Remember this? This is a scene in the play. If you're not familiar with it, I'm not really familiar with it either. But anyway, apparently Romeo and Juliet were young lovers. They loved each other, but they both came from families that didn't like each other, the Capulets and the Montagues. And so Juliet is calling out to Romeo and saying, you know, I'm stuck with this name Capulet, you're stuck with the name Montague, and they don't get along. What's in a name? You know, that's just a name, it's just a label. It doesn't mean anything. It's not who we really are. A rose, if you call it a rose, it's sweet. If you call it, Highway 405, it would still be as sweet. It's just a name. So that's what, that's the name. So that's sort of the way in which this is presented. I would say this is a very conventional way of thinking about names. It's a way we think about names too. So here you see an image of something very sweet and kind of round and red and juicy. It's something that we like to eat. There's some beautiful examples of them here in our own hygiene. Does this thing have a name? Do you know what the name of this is? Yes. Apple. You're exactly right. The students here are brilliant, I'll tell you right now. You guys are top notch. Very good. So we give it the name apple. So we think of apple, ooh, sweet, juicy, good, good, good. But if we called it something else, would it be less sweet, less juicy, less delicious? What if we called it a banana? Would it taste different? What if we called it a carburetor? What if we called it a dingo? Would it taste any different? So the conventional logic, the way in which we think about names normally, is that names aren't the thing. A name is different from a thing that's named. A name is a word, it's a label, it's not the essence of a thing. We could call this little red thing anything, and it would taste as sweet. A rose could be anything, it would smell as sweet. And the same thing, we say a name is not the same as a person. It's not the essence or quality of a person. And so for many of us, that's how we think of names. That's sort of the, as I mentioned, the conventional. That's the usual way that we talk about names. They're labels, they're words. But I ask all of you, is that always true? If we just think of names as labels or words, not being the same as a thing, is that really true? Well, think about this. We all have surnames, I think, or family names. For the most part, we inherit those names. So names like Capulet or Montague, Taira or Minamoto, Sanchez, Berkowitz, Matsumoto, we all have family names that we've inherited from our parents, and they inherited from their parents, etc., going way, way back. And of course, some people change their surnames. Maybe if they're married, some people change, or they want to change it legally, they can change their names. It's possible to change it, but most of us have surnames that we inherited. So our surname, our family name, means something. It's not just a word. It's not just a label. It tells us about where we come from. It tells us about our family. It tells us about our heritage. So a name is not just a word. And for most of us, we have first names as well, right? Those names were usually chosen for us by our parents, like Juliet or Romeo, or it could be anything. There's all sorts of names that our parents choose for us, and they choose our names for a number of reasons. Maybe they just like the name, or maybe it was the name of a movie star they liked, okay? Maybe the name was something just sort of indicated, it was passed down. Maybe in certain families, everyone is named William or Henry or James. Or maybe it's a name that we are given because of a certain custom in our family. Ichiro is a Japanese name usually given to the firstborn son, okay? Jiro is the second-born son, okay? So there's that custom. And so names can be given to us by our parents. Sometimes we keep them, sometimes they can be changed. But those names aren't just words, they mean something, or they meant something to our parents when they chose us. The first names chosen by parents they kind of go through evolution. And so you look every year on Google and you can see what are the favorite names given to babies. They change, right? And so those names can be, popular names, but they can be names that mean something to the parents. Or they can be names that are, meant by the parents to sort of distinguish the child from other people. Like, didn't Kim and Kanye name one of their kids North? Remember that? Or Gwyneth Paltrow named her child Apple? So there's all sorts of ways in which we can be named. So names aren't just not words. Some people claim that a name impacts a person's personality. So our names bear information about our class, our educational level, our ethnic origin, or at least those of our parents. Some people make assumptions, often incorrect, about people based on their names. Okay? And a name can exert unconscious influence over a person's choices. This is something I'm not so sure about. It was stated in the article I read, and it was on the internet, so of course it must be true. It said there's overabundance of dentists named Dennis. Maybe, I don't know. And maybe a lot of lawyers are named Lauren. That may be the case. There was a claim made, and I don't know whether that's fake news or not. So those are questions I want us to just think about. I'm not going to spend the whole time talking about it, just the questions I'm throwing out for our thinking now and later on. What does a name mean? What value does a name have? What does it signify? What does it tell us about a person? In order, what I'm suggesting is a name is not just a label. It's not just a word. Okay? And even though Juliet and William Shakespeare tell us so, it's not always the case, okay? Especially for people. So let me ask this, just to kind of emphasize and think about the question. What if we suddenly had no name? What if you suddenly had no name? All of us have names. Suddenly, all of a sudden, bam, nothing. There's no name by which we are referred, okay? What would we lose by having no name? Well, I would suggest we do lose a lot. We lose our sense of identity, our sense of uniqueness, maybe even our sense of self. Though I have to say, to be quite honest, I grew up in Minnesota, and my name is David Matsumoto. I was the only David Matsumoto within like 1,000 miles, as far as I knew. I thought I was the only David Matsumoto in the world. Till I moved out to California, I've subsequently met 7 David Matsumoto, or at least known of 7 David Matsumotos. In fact, one David Matsumoto lives in the same town that we live in. He teaches at San Francisco State University. We receive each other's email. We get invited to various conferences, and we get our cars serviced at the same place. And so identity is, and names are a little bit weird sometimes. But if we would lose our name, we'd lose a sense of connection with others, certainly our family. What if there's no name? We lose the connection with family, our ancestors, our community, our ethnicity, our culture. I would suggest we lose our place in the world if we're just a blank. And I think we even lose our sense of time and era. So names are important. So if we were to lose our names and not have a name, we'd lose a lot. In a sense, if we were to lose our name, we'd also lose our face, I think. We'd become a faceless them, or those people. We'd become a number or a digit, one of billions that could get swallowed up in the ether. We would lose our voice. No one could hear us, I think. No one would listen to us. No one would recognize us or know who we are. Sometimes our names are taken away from us. They're taken away by others, by authorities, by our oppressors deliberately to keep us under their thumb, to take away our identity, our sense of self. They may take away our names just to remove our own humanity, to make us less than human. They remove our names. But all too often, I would suggest, we also let our own names slip away. We sort of lose a sense of uniqueness. We stop reflecting upon where we've come from and what our heritage is and what the meaning of our name really holds for us. We lose our name sometimes. So, I want to talk about someone who lost his name and then regained it. Nelson Mandela, I think all of you are familiar with him. He was born in 1918, passed away in 2013. He's known as a person who is really one of the leaders in the movement to end apartheid in South Africa, to bring about a new nation built on freedom and equality. He became a president in South Africa, seen by many people as a person sort of up there in the ranks along with Martin Luther King or Gandhi or others. So I'm going to talk about Nelson Mandela. When Nelson Mandela is his family's surname, so he was given that name, he inherited that name, Mandela, by his family. His birth name is, I can't say it, Rolihlahla. Rolihlahla was his birth name. It's in his native language of Xhosa, and it was given to him by his father. Apparently it literally means pulling the branch off, that should be off, sorry, off a tree. Pulling the branch off a tree, or in a general sense, it means troublemaker. So maybe that was a reflection on the character and personality of the little boy. Rolihlahla, troublemaker. That's a name I might take for myself. That fits, okay? Nelson, interestingly enough, wasn't his birth name. It was given to him by a teacher on his first day of school. And maybe the teacher was like me, having a problem pronouncing Rolihlahla. Anyway, his teacher, I think, was not in the same tribe and clan. And so it was a custom, I guess, to give young students in South Africa Western or English names. And so his name became Nelson Mandela. His clan name was Madiba, and that's the name of his clan. This comes back to be important later on. Here's a name I can't pronounce. Dali Bungha was a name he was also received when he was 16 years old. He underwent a special initiation ceremony at the age of 16. He was a leader of the tribe, and Dali Bungha means creator or founder of the council. So he was an important person in that tribe. He joined the African National Congress, which was an organization that was set out to overturn apartheid, the state-sanctioned system of segregation in South Africa. He was arrested, tried, and convicted of sedition for activities opposing apartheid, and he was sent to jail. He was imprisoned for 27 years by the South African government, and it was then and there that his name was taken away. He was no longer Nelson Mandela, no longer any of the names that had been given to him. He was now only inmate number 466/64. That was his name for 64 years. And we can only imagine the government did so in order just to remove his identity, to remove his humanity, to remove his significance. Because Nelson Mandela was among the leaders of the African National Congress and the anti-apartheid movement during his young life. And the government perhaps just wanted to remove him from the scene. To take away his name was to take away his existence, to take away his memory, to take away the impact that he might have on other young South Africans. So they attempted to do so by calling him inmate number 466/64. But Nelson Mandela's name was not forgotten. In fact, it was remembered and carried on by people opposed to apartheid within the country, but throughout the world. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember that or to be a part of that movement, of always remembering Mandela, of bringing Mandela's name to the fore. And as a result of that, this worldwide movement, he was eventually released from prison. He was released from prison in 1990, and after that, he began to work. He could have gone and engaged in all sort of other activities to overthrow the government, but instead he worked along with F.W. de Klerk, who was also a past president of South Africa, to form the first multiracial elections in South Africa. For their efforts, both Mandela and de Klerk were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And then in 1994, he was elected as South Africa's first black president, putting the past behind him, and he guided, behind him and his nation, he guided South Africa into a new era, not built on recrimination or revenge or hatred, but on a sense of national importance, the sense of the importance of the name. One interesting incident, apparently, is that when the South African rugby team, the Springboks, won the World Cup, he went there to award them the trophy. And at the time he donned, as you can see here, a green Springbok jersey. That jersey was like a symbol. It was beloved by the whites of South Africa and despised by the blacks. It was seen as a symbol of apartheid, of separation, of segregation, of inequality. But Mandela decided to don the jersey of the Springboks, and when he gave handed the World Cup to the captain of the Springboks, the entire stadium, and it said the nation erupted in chants of Nelson, Nelson. White and black joined together in praising their president. In his later years, until his death in 2013, Mandela was known by his countrymen simply as Tata, which means father, but also as Madiba. This is the name of his clan, his tribe. It's a mark of great honor. Okay, and so that became his name, Tata or Madiba. And so Nelson Mandela, the story of Nelson Mandela, is a story of a person who had a name, his name was taken away, and it was regained. He regained his name, his humanity, and became a great beacon for equality and reconciliation because of that. So his story tells us about a name, the importance of having a name, the importance of why names have impact for ourselves and others, why they might be taken away, and how they continue to serve and to move on as important both symbols, but also as realities of a person, and in this case, of a country. Buddhism also has an understanding that the name is not just a label. A name is more than just a word or a label, okay? In fact, I think in Buddhism, if we consider it, would see a name as an expression of a person, a very expression of who a person is. And a person can embody the meaning of one's name. So if you think about it that way, you think of Shinran Shonin and his many names, it's only natural that he would choose his own name. Because for him, as a Buddhist, a name is an expression of who he was. It embodies the meaning of his life. His life was embodied in the meaning of his name. The historical Buddha was also known by his names. So we know him as Buddha, but he was also known as Siddhartha, sometimes Siddhartha Gautama. That was his given name. Gautama was his family name, so sometimes he's known as Gautama Buddha. And sometimes he's named as Shakyamuni or Shakyamuni Buddha. That means the sage of the Shakya clan. That was their clan. So the Buddha himself had many, many names. In Buddhism, the very Buddha has what's called 10 epithets or 10 names. So the Buddha himself, enlightened beings are referred to by many different names. So we know Buddha, but that's not the only name. I'll read through them. Well, we won't have time to explain all of them, but the Tathagata, Arhat, Samyak Sambuddha, Vidya Karana Sampanna, Sugata, Lokavid, Anuttara, Purusa Damya Sharati. This is a hard one. Shasta Devi Manushyanam. And this is even harder. Buddha Lokanata, Buddha Bhagavat. So these are names in the ancient Indian languages, but they talk about different aspects of Buddha, different significant ways that we can give expression to the reality of Buddha. So for Buddha, again, that's one name, but there are many names, and they all mean something very important. The naming of a Buddha is very significant. Shinran Shonin also knew the religious importance of a name. And so we talked about before, in his life, through his adoption of many names, or being given many names, and his adopting of his true name, Gutoku Shaku Shinran, they express his path of deepening religious awareness. You can sort of trace a journey by looking at his names. You can almost see where he was at a time in his life and what he was going through and what he sort of knew. And you can see as he moved through life and he finally came to that moment in life when he had been exiled and sent off into distant Echigo to live among the farmers and the hunters and the fishers, that he realized, wow, this is my name. This is who I am, Gutoku, foolish, supple-haired Shinran, disciple of Shakyamuni. But for Shinran also, he realized in the teaching of Amida Buddha that name is important, that the name of Amida is important. It's the dynamic working of enlightenment. Shinran Shonin writes this. It's a long quote. I'll read it to you. From this treasure ocean of oneness, form was manifested, taking the name of Bodhisattva Dharmakara, who, through establishing the unhindered vow as the cause, became Amida Buddha. This Tathagata is the Dharma body as compassionate means. And this is the part I meant to introduced to you. Compassionate means refers to manifesting form, revealing a name, and making itself known to sentient beings. It refers to Amida Buddha. So I think we often ask ourselves, well, what is Amida Buddha? Who is Amida Buddha? Shinran Shonin asked the same question. And through his life, as he reflected on the teachings, as he entrusted in the vow and said the Nembutsu, as he deeply examined his own heart and mind, his own life, as he realized that he was always illuminated by the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha, he came to realize this. Amida Buddha is a name. The name is revealed. Out of formless reality, a name is revealed. It makes itself known to us, to me. It takes the name Namo Amida Butsu. That is Amida Buddha. So Amida Buddha, revealing itself as name, is the importance for Shinran. By revealing itself as name, it takes on reality, wisdom, and compassion come to flow within his hearts and minds. So I think this is how we might summarize the significance of the name, Namo Amida Butsu. Wisdom unfolds as compassion, formless enlightenment takes form. It names itself, Namo Amida Butsu. It reveals itself as name, Namo Amida Butsu. It's a voice that calls to us, Namo Amida Butsu. So we often ask ourselves, why do I say Namo Amida Butsu? What's the point of saying the Nembutsu? As we say Namo Amida Butsu, it's not just a word. We're not just saying a word that refers to something. It is the name of the Buddha, naming itself. And we hear it, we call it, and it enters into our heart. This is, I think, Shinran's deep insight into the meaning of name. Each and every day of our lives, we hear the Buddha's voice naming itself, Namo Amida Butsu. So every time we say and hear Namo Amida Butsu, it's enlightenment, the Buddha naming itself. We hear the name of Amida Buddha, which embodies all the virtues of the Buddha, perfect wisdom and compassion. And through that, we awaken to the reality of Amida's primal vow, which I mentioned, my rendering is the basic wish of life, to become itself and to give itself to others so they might live. And that we entrust in the vow, we hear the Buddha's name, we awaken to the boundless depth and breadth of life which supports and sustains us. And then, as we do, as we say and hear the Buddha naming itself, as we allow, we are enabled now then to entrust in the vow and awaken to this boundless flow of life that pervades our hearts and minds and the entire world. Then, like Shakyamuni Buddha and Shinran Shonin and countless others before us, we come to be named. We come to realize our true names, our own humanness, our own value. We realize peace. We realize wisdom and compassion, peace, fulfillment and joy, and know that we can help them become the true realities for all beings, for all people in the world. Shinran Shonin says, compassionate means refers to manifesting form, revealing a name, making itself known to sentient beings. It refers to Amida Buddha. And with that thought in mind, he then says, now I hear the Buddha naming itself, and now I've come to know my true name. Hence, I'm now neither a monk nor layperson. For this reason, I have taken the term Toku as my name. So thank you very much. That's the end of my talk. I wonder if I could ask all of you to join me together in Gassho as we say Namo Amida Butsu. And as we do so, let's hear the Buddha naming itself. And as we hear the Buddha naming itself, as it enters into our own ears and our own hearts and our own minds, we come to realize the Buddha is calling us to be named as well. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandam, namandam, namandam. Thank you very much.